Beneil Dariush versus Carlos Diego Ferreira. We got minus 125 on CDF and we got plus 105 on Beneil Dariush. Now, this is a rematch from a fight they had way back in October of 2014. So we're talking about just over 6 years ago that they first initially fought. That was the third fight for Carlos Diego Ferreira, and it was his first ever career loss as well, where Beneil Dariush did a really good job of going out there and controlling this fight with takedowns, with the striking. You could definitely see that he was a little bit further ahead with his striking at that time, and he had joined King's MMA not too long before that, whereas Carlos Diego Ferreira was still training by himself. He was his own head coach, had his own gym, and really didn't realize what it took for him to truly make it to the next level in this game. Like up until that point, he had already secured 2 victories, and he thought it was probably just going to continue to be as easy as that. Goes out there, chokes out Colton Smith in 38 seconds, and then he goes out there and finishes Ramsey Najem, a couple months after that, 2 months after that, actually, finishes him in the second round. Then he runs into Beneil Dariush roughly 2 months after that as well, too. So his first 3 fights in the UFC all came within a 4-month span. He just banged them out real quick. But then again, it makes sense if you go out there, finish a guy in 40 seconds, finish a guy in 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and then go out there and face a guy like Beneil Dariush, like I said, much further along in his career at that time, especially in the UFC. And on top of that, it's weird because he was the younger guy as well too. We have about a 5-year age difference, but obviously Beneil was fighting much better competition at that point in time. But the way Benny got the win that time was again over 8 minutes or close to 8 minutes of control time, pushing him up against the cage and really just doing him a little bit dirty. And again, in the striking exchanges, it definitely looked like Beneil was a little bit further ahead. Since that amount of time, we've seen Diego Ferreira lose to Dustin Poirier right after that. Again, you truly see the how far behind he really was in the striking game, especially going up against a much tougher test in Dustin Poirier in that fight. And then he goes out there and gets knocked out in the first round. Very, very tough test. But since then, been on an absolute tear. That was actually his first fight with Fortis MMA as well too, against Dustin Poirier. But you can't really see the progression of a fighter, right? Like their first fight in that camp. And what we have seen in that amount of time since, so it was April 2015 that we saw him get knocked out by Dustin Poirier. And now here he is, 7 months afterwards, starting a winning streak against Livio Bommercier, Jared Gordon, Kyle Nelson, Rustam Khabilov, Mirbek Taisumov, and Anthony Pettis. That's 6 straight wins that he's managed to put together in about 5 years' time, and very dominant wins as well, too. I put this out on Twitter earlier today in terms of the 3 fights that went to a decision for Carlos Diego Ferreira since his Dustin Poirier loss. He's averaged 283 strikes thrown or attempted per fight. Absolutely insane that he's putting up those types of numbers. Even in the Jared Gordon fight, which only lasted 2 seconds short of 2 minutes, he threw 60 strikes in that amount of time. Absolutely crazy, the pace and pressure and the coaching as well. We got to give a big hats off to Saif Sayoud, who's really transformed the game of Diego Ferreira from being, just this jiu-jitsu guy to, being more comfortable on the feet. Like if you go back and watch his fight with Benny and then put it up against his fight with Mirbek Taisumov, you see a complete change in terms of his demeanor when it comes to the striking game. Like he's not as stiff, he's bouncing around a little bit more, he's throwing combinations, he's moving very well, his head movement is good too, his striking defense is definitely up there. He did get rocked a little bit by Mirbek, but didn't get dropped, but definitely got rocked in that fight. But then since that moment in that fight, that was in the first round, he just changed gears and really started to put it on Mirbek and drowned him. That was kind of the fight that really put me on, like, just reminded me, okay, this is a guy that's been making changes and has made changes and came into that Mirbek Taisumov as like a plus 250 underdog, goes out there in Mirbek Taisomov's pretty much his backyard over there in Abu Dhabi and goes out there and puts it on him, absolutely smashes him from pillar to post from the beginning of the fight to the 15th minute. I've never seen Mirbek that roughed up in a fight, so it really really put me on notice with Diego Ferreira. Then in the Anthony Pettis fight, he goes in there. I think he has a pretty solid favorite, minus 235 favorite. I backed him there as my lock of the night play, and he comes through for us. Anthony Pettis really didn't have much for his pace and pressure style, and eventually found himself on his back. And Anthony Pettis, and then we saw him sink in the choke. Interesting thing about that choke as well, too, you see it on the side of the head rather than like fully on the back with the hooks in and all that. But the squeeze of Diego Ferreira is just absolutely insane. So he's able to get Anthony Pettis out there relatively well. That was about 2 minutes into that second round. Well, Beneil Dariush on the flip side, we're talking about a guy that went on to lose 3 fights since he beat Carlos Diego Ferreira. He also went to a draw with Evan Dunham. But since his loss to Alexander Hernandez, where he got starched in 42 seconds, that was in March of 2018. He comes back in November of that year and takes Thiago Moises to a decision. That's a fight where he accrued over 13 and a half minutes of control time, and I believe he played that fight as safe as possible to kind of, to avoid another knockout loss. Thiago Moises is a guy, mainly a jiu-jitsu guy, but we've seen some advancements with his hands, and he has a nasty head kick as well, which he's actually secured a couple knockout victories with. So I think that's what Beneil Dariush was trying to avoid in that fight. Drew Dober fight, it was looking interesting for Drew Dober in that first round. Beneil was the one on his back foot. Drew was the one moving forward, landing a lot of good shots, did a good job of staying out of bad positions in that first round. But unfortunately, in that second round, we saw a little bit of a poor fight IQ from Drew Dober, who got out of bad positions, but then just went back to grappling and tried taking advantage of the clinch positions. That's where we saw Beneil Dariush really flip the script, hit a switch on him, get his back eventually, and then work towards that armbar and just pulls off a beautiful armbar with 19 seconds left in that second round. Very unfortunate loss for Drew Dober, who's looking really good in that fight. Then we see him go out there against Frank Camacho, get the rear naked choke there, has an absolute war against Drakkar Klose in a fight where the majority of that first round he spent on the back of Drakkar Klose in a standing position, just wasn't able to pull off a rear naked choke. And then eventually in that second round, we see them go to war. Drakkar Klose lands a lot of bombs, and then Beneil Dariush comes back and lands his bombs and eventually knocks him out with probably one of the craziest finishes we've seen, or at least sequences that we saw in 2020. And then against Scott Holtzman, hurt Scott Holtzman early with a beautiful knee in the clinch, and then follows up with the barrage. Holtzman saves himself a little bit, but eventually falls into the brawl once again, and we see Beneil Dariush lands a beautifully placed spinning back fist. It almost looked like an elbow as well too. What I've been seeing from Benny as of late is he doesn't mind engaging in these firefights anymore. Like he believes he has the durability and the chin to do it. And what can you say? It's been a long time since we saw him knocked out against Alexander Hernandez, coming up on 3 years now. And he's more than willing to go into that and exchange with these guys. We saw him kind of attacking the grappling every now and then with some of these guys, but it seems like he's very confident in his hands, and obviously doing very good work with Kings MMA and Rafael Cordero, and it just continues to show on a fight-to-fight basis that this guy has great kicks, great punches, solid Muay Thai, great knees in the Muay Thai clinch as well, like we saw against Scott Holtzman. But I feel like the changes that we've seen from Carlos Diego Ferreira is definitely going to be the factor here. Like his pace and pressure of just always pushing these guys back I think it's going to catch up to Beneil here. Beneil, you see in these fights that are going into the second round, but it end up getting a finish, he seems to be sucking wind a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that he has a cardio issue or anything like that, but I'd be interested to see how he deals with a guy who's going to be pushing forward the entire time, pushing him up against the cage. It's a smaller cage as well, too, so less room for Beneil to really, pivot out of these bad spots. I'd be interested to see if Benny doesn't get the finish in the first round and a half, how he deals with that pressure of Carlos. Like we've seen improvements from Carlos, especially in those grappling exchanges. Like Rustam Khabilov goes out there and lands, I believe, 3 or 4 takedowns on him, but doesn't even accrue more than 1 minute of control time. Like just like a cat, Carlos Diego Ferreira is just right back on his feet. He's very aware and has a good understanding of the fact that, okay, the longer that my back is on the ground, and I'm sure he learned it from the Beneil Dariush fight, the more that he's losing this fight. And he does a good job of just never conceding position anymore. He might get taken down, but he does a good job of getting right back to his feet and working back to his feet. I feel like his jiu-jitsu on par with Beneil at this point in time, especially his MMA jiu-jitsu. That's something that we're seeing an improvement from. But again, it's definitely his hands, his forward pressure, and his willingness to be comfortable in that fight, in a fight, and just move forward and know that, okay, no matter what this guy throws at me, I can continue to walk forward through it. And then eventually his cardio, his confidence is all going to be sucked dry. And what's left is going to be me moving forward and really putting it on you. And that's what I believe Sayif Saud has truly invested in Carlos's game, which has allowed him to make as many improvements as he has. I think, at 36, he doesn't have much time to keep this ball rolling, especially with that type of game plan. So getting a big fight like this against Beneil Dariush is huge for him. If he gets victory here, that's back-to-back wins over Anthony Pettis. Say what you want about him, it's still a name to get under your belt. And then also Beneil Dariush, who's also on a solid win streak of his own now, 5 straight fights for him. So I like Diego Ferreira here. I like him roughly around that even money. We got minus 125. I think that's a solid line too. And I think this is going to be a prime example of seeing fighters who probably weren't ready for the big stage, but have made strides and improvements while they're on the big stage. And we've seen a complete change in the game of Diego Ferreira, his comfortability on the feet, his pace and pressure, like I said right off the bat. I love that. His cardio seems amazing as well too. It's always his opponents that are sucking wind by the time that third round comes. So I'm interested to see if he's able to do the same thing here to Beneil Dariush, being the guy that's just moving forward the entire time, being the bull. And again, Beneil Dariush has solid striking, so he could be a solid matador as well too. But from what I've seen with Beneil Dariush, with Diego Ferreira, is solid durability, solid chin, and he should be able to move forward and just rag on Beneil Dariush this entire time. So I'm liking Carlos. I think he wins by decision. I wouldn't be surprised to see the durability of Beneil catch up with him over these next couple fights. Like, again, he hasn't been knocked down in this stretch since his Alexander Hernandez fight, but he has definitely eaten some damage and has definitely been wobbled and stunned a couple times. I don't know if Carlos will be the one that puts him out, but I definitely think that he can give him some trouble. But I'll go with Diego Ferreira to win this fight via decision and continue this Fortis Ferreira run that he's on since his loss to Dustin Poirier way back in 2014 or 15, I believe. His last to Beneil was in 2014. His last to Dustin Poirier was in April of 2015. So since then, he's really turned the tide and gotten some solid victories under his belt. And I think that this will be another one that he gets to add to his mantle. So once again, I'll go with Diego Ferreira to win this fight via decision.